Years ago, a crack commando unit was sent to prison by a military court for a crime they didn't commit. These men promptly escaped from maximum security stockade to the Los Angeles underground. Today, still wanted by the government, they survive as soldiers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team.
Oh, wrong one. That's right. Today we will be looking at the Genesis Mega Drive cover for Soldiers of Fortune, or how it's known in Europe, the Chaos Engine. A Soldier of Fortune is just another term for mercenary, someone who works as a soldier for the highest bidder. No allegiance to any country, just plain money talks. The game's plot explains that the Chaos Engine is creating traps and obstacles for the player. It's just like an AI gone haywire trying to destroy everything. And the mission is to stop that engine. This is one of my favorite covers, and one reason I even got into collecting games in the first place. The cover is amazing, and if I ever saw it on a store shelf, I would pick it up immediately if I had the money. Little known fact, the game was actually inspired by William Gibson's The Difference engine, and not the A-Team. Sorry to disappoint. I'm not a big fan of the newer red Genesis logo. I grew accustomed to the old familiar black grid background. However, I think I'll let this one slide because they actually play around with the logo a bit and make it look more interesting. Here you see this bad looking dude. He's giving the illusion of depth by having his arm in front of the Genesis logo. I love it. Let's start at the top. The first thing that I find a little annoying is the fact that Spectrum Holobyte and Bitmap Brothers couldn't wait to advertise themselves as the creators or publishers. Their logos take precedent to even the title of the game. Those two icons above the title screw up the art piece, and that's because those two icons are also found on the spine of the game and in the back. So was it really necessary to have it on top of the title? Moving on, I think the title looks awesome. The green gradient with the red S's for the money hugging that fortune section of the title just looks perfect. It immediately gave me that vibe of money for the green and blood for the red, which just goes great with the whole mercenary Soldier of Fortune. Moving along, we see a frog on the left side and a man pointing a gun at what looks like a Swamp Thing creature. Swamp Thing was a 1970s monster which was made famous in comic books. It was big in the 1970s and early 1990s with cartoons, and it has even inspired some films. Anyway, moving right along, we see a pretty tough looking dude gazing up with his mustache and mullet, looking like he's the top dog, all while holding a bazooka. He and the men above pointing the gun look very similar. They could be brothers. His name is Navi, and he's one of the most expensive mercenaries to hire in the game. Right next to him, we have what looks like a robot holding a machine gun. This guy is known as the Mercenary, and is one of the most well-rounded characters in the game. It looks a little bit like Tin Man to me. Moving down, right in between, we see what I think is one of the most interesting characters in the group. This guy looks like a priest that appears to be praying. He's wearing those round sunglasses that make him look even more sinister. What can a God-fearing priest be doing with a bunch of criminal-looking guys? That alone makes me want to pick this game up. Interesting note, however, For the North American release, the Preacher was redesigned slightly and renamed The Scientist, because the publisher felt that a preacher killing people would be a bit offensive. Well, I'm glad they left the cover intact, because even if he's a scientist, he still looks like he's praying. Right underneath him, we have what looks to be the Muscle. Big guy, big gun, tough as nails, with his head bashed in. He goes by the name of the Brigand. And finally, to the right, we have a Brad Pitt looking fellow with a single gun. He looks like that suave, always in control character that just seems to always do everything correctly. He's named the Gentleman. He, along with the Preacher, are the least expensive to hire because they are very low on health and they are generally harder to play. Let's take a quick look at the European Mega Drive cover. A different approach for sure. We have each character in its own box with its own color. The Brigand and the Thug no longer look identical, and the Preacher actually looks more like a scientist than an actual priest. The cover is a little too simple for my taste, but it does give that James Bond villain type vibe, so it's pretty interesting. More European than American for sure. Finally, I would be remiss if I did not mention that a sequel was released in 1996. The original game came out in 1993, so this was done 3 years after. It was released for the Amiga only. The Super Nintendo and the Genesis did not get a release, and it was known as the Chaos Engine 2. The cover itself is nothing too special. We have two redesigned characters in the front that appear to be of a style more closely related to the actual game interface. The selectable characters were also decreased from 6 to 4. You can see these in the corners of the game. And the game was released with great reviews, so if you loved the first one, do yourself a favor and try looking for the second one, even if it is for the Amiga. I think that's it for now. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe. It would really help since I'm just getting started with this channel. Thank you.